having civic education and electoral education in place, our big goal is that people understand what we are doing here and understand their role in the society, in the community, and know how even to ask public institutions to be accountable for their actions.
The full and free exercise of our sacred right and duty to vote is more important in the long run than the personal hopes or ambitions of any candidate for any office in the land.
You're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, an insider's look at election administration hosted by Brianna Lennon and Eric Fay.
Hello, everyone. It's Eric Fay, and you're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, a podcast that explores local election administration. A few episodes ago, you heard from the Central Election Commission of Moldova,
which is celebrating its 25th anniversary.
Remember, Moldova is a small country between Romania and Ukraine that was part of the former Soviet Union. Brianna and I traveled to Moldova this past summer and spoke with people involved at all levels of the Moldovan election system, from local to nationwide.
Well, the CEC organizes and manages all of the elections in the country. They have a partner organization called the Center for Continuous Electoral Training, or CICDE, that's responsible for continued education of election workers and the education of the next generation of voters in the country. Center is celebrating its 11th year and is one of the most unique organizations that we have seen because it is a national investment in civic education to make sure that students and the general public have a good understanding of how elections work and how they can participate in their democracy.
In this episode, we're speaking with Dr. Doina Bordeianu, the director of CICDE, and her peer, Pavel Cabacenco, who has been an advisor to CICDE over the years. We hope you enjoy the episode.
The first thing we always ask every guest on our podcast is, how did you end up working in elections? So whoever wants to start, tell us how you ended up working in elections.
For me, I'd say it was the second working experience. Just after the graduating university, I was working for 1 year as a reporter in a news agency, and I was working with the Central Electoral Commission, writing news about their activity, and I found out that they have some vacancies, and I said, okay, I graduated public administration, let's give a try to this this profession. So it was 15 years ago, and since then I'm here, first at the Central Electoral Commission and now at the Center for Continuous Electoral Training.
Well, I started the same 15 years ago, where it was like a short adventure for me at the beginning. So I started with the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, which came back to Moldova in 2018. 2008. Yeah, I'm already lost in time. Sorry. So in 2008, IFES came to Moldova and with the new program, and they were looking for local staff working in again to help Central Election Commission in upcoming elections in 2009. And initially it was the 1 year project. So 2008 and 2009 it had to finish. But the work that we've done and the support that was needed after 2009 made IFES stay longer in Moldova, almost for the next 5 years. And this is how I got into this. We call it sometimes a disease. If you start with elections, even for a short period of 1 year, then you say, okay, maybe I stay longer, because it's always something new that you learn, something that is changing in the electoral code or electoral laws of the countries. Then it may be political context changes. So there is always something new, some dynamics, and space to learn and improve things.
I think, Pavel, what you said about you start in elections and then it just kind of, we say in the United States, it kind of gets in your blood and you can't leave it.
My deputy calls it a virus.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
same thing.
So I think for most American election administrators, when we think of training, we think of training the poll workers, the people that work in the polling stations. And obviously this center is much more than that. For an American audience, can you explain who are the people you are training and in what ways are you training them? For what purpose are you training them?
Of course, our main task is offering training in the electoral field for poll workers. In Moldova, there is a three-tier election administration. Just the Central Electoral Commission is a permanent body. The other ones at the district level and at the polling station level are temporary, created just before elections. So we are providing training for them in the electoral period. It's an operational training that usually takes several hours. Beside this, we are training party representatives per request or observers from NGOs also per request. We are training auxiliary staff of the polling station. There are operators of the informational system elections, the operators, and also we have this kind of IT staff at the level of District Electoral Commission that also have some modules in the informational system in size, and we train them on how to use that modules.
There are almost 14 categories of beneficiaries of the training for the training center. So it depends on the type of elections we organize. So in electoral period, it can be like 12, 14, sometimes 15 categories of beneficiaries, including what Doina just mentioned. But judges, then police. Well, so there are quite a number of people and organizations that we train. Of course, because Moldova is a small country, so you can't compare it with the US or even one of the states. But for us, what the number of people whom we train is 35, almost 35,000 for one electoral event. It's quite a big number, especially taking in consideration the time constraints. Of course, you as election officials, you know that time is working against us, and we have a certain date. And only in COVID times we saw the examples when the elections were postponed, but mostly this is more an exception. So we can't postpone an election, and we have a calendar, a strict calendar when certain activities should happen, and our election officials, they should know how to do it. So that is why we are very working in a very condensed environment when we have to train a big number of people in a short period of time.
The district electoral commissions are created 50 days prior election day, and then the polling electoral bureaus are created 25 days prior to election day. So we are trying all the time to provide training in the first days of operations, because in Moldova, the polling election bureaus, they have a lot of functions to fulfill. There is related to the voters list, and they need to have these abilities and knowledge just before starting. But also we are trying now to develop more and more topic-related, let's say, training courses, such as integrity in election or misuse of administrative resources or accessibility in elections, such courses that would be interesting for a variety of electoral stakeholders, including the general public.
Hey, it's Eric Fay, and you're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, a podcast that explores local election administration. Aditya Moldovinaska.
One of the questions we've been asking everyone really centers around public trust in elections and voter confidence in elections. Is that part of the strategic plans that you try to implement in training? I guess the better question is increase of public confidence and voter trust part of the mission of some of this training?
I think this is more part of the CEC mission, but having civic education and electoral education in place, our big goal is that people understand what we are doing here and understand their role in the society, in the community, and know how even to ask public institutions to be accountable for their actions. So even if it's not our main mandate, through our action, we are helping the state and the electoral authority to achieve this goal.
But also everything what we do is about trust in elections. So even if we do it in the right way and there is no trust, so then it's a problem. Yeah. So the results of the elections may not be accepted if there is no confidence in the election institutions in the process. So the trainings, they're contributing directly to this through the professionalism of the election officials. So the more professional they are, the more trust is there. So because especially polling station staff, they are on the front line, and people, our voters, they meet these people when they come to the polling station, and if they are professional, if they know how to do their work, if they provide transparency, they provide good services, they know how to actually organize elections. So then it of course gives confidence of voters, but also other stakeholders like party agents and political parties, candidates, and then journalists. So then the whole society understands. So okay, it's a fair game and a fair result, so we can accept it.
Talk to us a little bit more about that. So about how many people are doing this training and who trains the trainers?
Well, we train the trainers. We just did one training 3 weeks ago, training of trainers in Russian language.
So we have permanent staff, 9 persons. In the beginning we were 7, but now we are 9. We're growing a bit our team, and we have around 20 trainers involved for each election. So in our database there are more than 20, but for one election we need around 20 persons extra, additional 20 persons. We are providing them an initial training as training of trainers, usually around 4 days of training, and then we have monthly continuous training for them on different topics. Either it's related to some amendments to the legislation, we are taking some specific operations that we want to go more in details and to understand how it works. Or, as I said, we have this cross-cutting themes and topics as accessibility, integrity, gender, that we are go more deep. Because of course the trainer should be knowledgeable, first of all, and as you probably understood already, training the polling station is not members is not just about the E-day operations. It's much more, because they are working 25 days prior to election, so there are a lot of stuff to be trained.
I had a question specifically about the training, just because I think another thing that U.S. election officials are used to, just basic how the polling place works, how to use the machines and the ballots and things like that. But you mentioned you have accessibility portions, you have gender portions. What did those cover? Because we don't have those. I mean, we are told to incorporate them, but we're also trying to weigh, we need to teach them how to run the polling place. We want to teach them all this other stuff, but we run out of time, or they run out of capacity to learn, because we just don't have, there's so much to learn.
Yeah, you're right. It's a challenge. We are incorporating the cross-cutting teams, because voters are very diverse. You have in a locality both men and women, both old and young people. You have people with disabilities also, and you have to know how to communicate with them and how to offer electoral services, qualitative electoral services. Of course, you can't cover the entire topic in a half hour allocated for this, but you can for sure point out some main principles of activity and make them be aware, first of all, of the equipment that are available in a polling station for the person with disabilities. Have them understand that these equipments are useful also for parents with small children that are coming to the polling station, or for elder people that are have difficulties in walking. So they have to understand that it's more general, and it doesn't address just to person with a visible disability or need. About gender in Moldovan election administration, there are more women than men. Still, we have a difference in representation at a leading position, meaning that even if an electoral body is 80% composed by women, for instance, they will elect a man as a chair. But anyway, it's probably the focus is more on how they interact with the voters, and to be sensitive to their different needs.
I also think that the answer here is in the name of the center. So because if we translate it in English, it's a Center for Continuous Electoral Training. So the key word is continuous. So yes, center is doing the training before elections for election officials who are temporary staff. So they hired just before elections, but there is still room for training in between the elections, and part of the poll workers, we know from where they are coming. They are teachers, they are public election officials in the regions. So this training is offered to them in between elections, including if we take the disability and inclusion of persons with disability. So the center, in collaboration with some civil society organization in the field, is doing the simulation for the public officials when we organize two polling stations, one accessible, another inaccessible. So and then they would the potential or future election officials would try it themselves, being a person with in the wheelchair, for example, or a blind person. And they would try it, and then would have a different approach and be better prepared for the information that we give them before elections, like more mentally, more will feel it, even emotionally will feel it.
Okay, so I think if there was another C to be added to the acronym, it could be comprehensive, because the training sounds much more comprehensive than, as Brianna said, most American election administrators are able to provide. One aspect of the comprehensive nature I find really interesting is the training or education you do with, you said, the judiciary judges, police officials, other emergency responders, political parties, or other NGOs. I think almost every election administrator has found themselves post-election in a scenario where they're in front of a judge because a candidate is challenging the results or they want to recount. And I've been in court where most of the time in court is just me or one of my colleagues just explaining to the judge how elections work, or me on the phone with some party observer on election day just explaining what they're seeing because they don't understand what they're seeing. Do you have any way of quantifying the effect of what you've done in this regard, this training with maybe non-traditional election actors? Because I hadn't thought of it till now, but that could be of great benefit to other election administrators to focus on these kinds of people.
Yeah, definitely. It's very helpful, and it's true not only for judges but also for policemen coming to the polling stations and knowing what they have to do, what are their actually rights and responsibilities at the polling station. So it's very helpful and leads to the better trust and confidence in electoral process, and that is why I think Center is focusing on these categories of beneficiaries, not direct but still a very important one, and developing a training program with them, together with them, because the training for the judges, for the police is conducted and developed actually with in collaboration with the structures responsible for the training in their system. So it's a joint thing and collaboration starting at this level. And of course, it's important to have about the quantifying it. I think it's difficult to say. Probably the results of the elections, the quality, the reports of the international and local observers would be this mark that is given for us as a training providers.
Yeah, and the request, if a request exists from the police, for instance, or from the National Institute of Justice for training judges, we think so we can suppose that the training is useful and is relevant for them.
You've been listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, a podcast that explores local election administration. I'm your host, Brianna Lennon, alongside Eric Fay. Thanks to KBIA for making this podcast possible. Our managing editor is Rebecca Smith, our managing producer is Aaron Hay, and our associate producers are Abigail Ruman and Katie Quinn. This has been High Turnout, Wide Margins. Thanks for listening.